Welcome to Troweling Down, Biblical Archaeology for the 21st Century. Hi, I'm Gary Byers. This is Dr. Stephen Collins, and we're going to talk to you about the ancient world and how it relates to even us today. Now, you were at the American schools. No, it's...
we changed the name because certain parts of the former name were not considered politically correct.
So it's what again now?
The American Society of Overseas Research.
That's it. American Society of Overseas Research used to be for 100 years the American Schools of Oriental Research, but Oriental was not a cool word anymore.
Right. So if you own a restaurant and the title of the restaurant is Wong's Oriental Cuisine, then you got to change it.
Yeah, it's just not politically
But
correct
anyway,
anymore.
they made us change the name.
So anyway, they had their annual meeting, and you were there in Boston.
I was there.
And where was it located?
Right across the street from Legal Seafood.
That's really the one. That's where I was going. I knew that was an important thing. We don't remember where it was, but it was across the street from Legal Seafood, and that's really the reason you went to the conference, because you could get to a Legal Seafood every day that you were there. Did you?
Yes. I ate at least once a day at Legal Seafood, because it was right out the front door of the hotel, the Hilton Plaza, Park Plaza Hotel or whatever downtown Boston. And so you just go right out the front door and right across the street, and there it was.
And you presented at the meeting.
Oh, thought you were going to say, you presented at Legal Seafood.
Oh.
No, well, I would have if we could have gotten everybody over there. That would have been good.
Yeah.
But yes, I did the presentation.
And yours was? You remember?
You're going to make me remember. No, I did it on the transition from the Intermediate Bronze Age, around 2100 BC, the transition from the Intermediate Bronze Age to the Middle Bronze Age fortification systems at el-Hammam.
All right, so we talked about our dig site. We're done excavating, at least for the current, and so we're doing a lot of this synthesis and analysis, and so you took some of that with you. So there was another guy that spoke at that ASOR conference in Boston. His name is Glenn Schwartz. He's from Johns Hopkins University, and of course I'm a Baltimore boy, so Johns Hopkins is something that I'm very familiar with and have a lot of kinship with and all that stuff. And they were, in my own training and studies there, they were a big part of the deal. Not studies at Hopkins, but in the Baltimore area. So Glenn excavated in 2004 a Syrian site, and it was basically halfway between the Euphrates River to the east and the Syrian city of Aleppo to the west. So that's inland Syria in that region. It's a plain, big open plain, and I wasn't at this site, but I've had the privilege of being at Aleppo, which was all part of the great big mess that happened in this recent months now, last month, there in Syria. So he was excavating at the site, and he excavated a tomb. Now they have a Bronze Age city at the same time as the interface between the Intermediate Bronze Age and the Middle Bronze Age you were just talking about at Hammam, and at another not too far away site, Ebla, and we've discussed Ebla, and you probably talked about it at your talk. So at that time period, this was also a major city, and the site was called mother of the Mara, M-A-R-R-A. So they were excavating on the Acropolis, the upper city, and they found some royal tombs, or elite tombs. Maybe they weren't royal, but elite tombs. And in this elite tomb, one of them, all kinds of stuff. I saw one photograph.
How big was the site?
The site's 20 hectare, which is...
So it's up in the same size as el-Hammam.
Yeah, Hammam and Ebla size. It's big, important site. I honestly had never heard of it. The ancient name is suggested as Tuba, but I just didn't really know anything about it at all. So I was shocked as I began to read about this, and so in this tomb, all kinds of stuff. And there's one photograph that I've got that just pretty cool stuff, and there were 4 little clay cylinders lightly baked each one of the four had some incisions on it that you couldn't help but think, it looks like it could be writing. You
So
don't know.
they weren't carved up in relief. They were actually incised into it. Okay.
Incised into it. And they all had holes going through them, so it looked like they would go on a necklace. Separate or different or same, we don't know. The excavator, Schwartz, did not think they went together, but maybe labels for something he didn't know. So he did his due diligence and all this stuff, and he couldn't help but think it wasn't cuneiform script. It wasn't hieroglyphic script.
And cuneiform, because we've seen it many times on cylinder seals, is actually done in relief.
That's true.
So that when the impression is made in clay or wax, it then is impressed into it. So it has to be carved in relief on the cylinder. And if it's inscribed, if these letters are inscribed, and hieroglyphs will be the same way, they would be carved up in relief, so they'd leave an impression. Or it could be in reverse relief, but anyway, to have it incised,
To be a seal,
to have it incised is the kind of thing you do with linear script. To me, that says something very different.
Yeah. So anyway, he took it to one of his colleagues. He was a specialist in city building and architecture and development of societies, structures. And so he took it to one of his colleagues who was into text and said, could this be writing? And could this be an early form of the alphabet? And the colleague agreed it could be. The problem was this tomb was dated to between 24 and 2300 BC in the middle of inland Syria. The alphabet, as far as we know, goes back as far as 1900 BC in Egypt, in the Sinai. So this is not the area where you would expect an alphabetic script so early. And so his colleague agreed in principle, but so he wrote a paper. He gave a talk at a professional meeting like ASOR, and people found it interesting, but everybody said it's too early and it's not the right region, so it can't be. And he has been battling this, but feeling like, I don't know what else it could be, for 20 years, 2004.
You have something in front of you that you discovered, that you see it, you understand what it, you may not know what it is totally, completely, but it sits there and you look at it and you know you've never seen anything like this before. It doesn't stack up, and if it keeps quacking like a duck and waddling like a duck, but nobody wants to call it a duck.
And he knows it better than anybody else. He's been through it. He's thought it all through. He's looked at everything, but he keeps talking about it, and nobody listens until, whatever the reason. Well, one of his former students, Chris Ralston, who is a well internationally recognized epigrapher, he took it to Chris and said, "Look, nobody's buying this. What do you think?" And Ralston looked it over and said, I see what you're saying. It does look like script, and it could be alphabetic. Well, armed with his encouragement, because that was his specialty, Chris Ralston, and he's internationally recognized, he gave another talk at ASOR, where you were. I don't know if he went to Legal Seafood as well, but he talked
I was
at
probably
ASOR.
eating at Legal Seafood when he was giving that talk, because I didn't attend. No, I had it marked to attend, and it was that or something else, and I wanted to be there, but I didn't make it. I went to
go
another
back
paper.
and watch the videos.
But I can go back and watch the video.
So anyway, this time it caught on. And I have read about it in a bunch of publications.
Now this is odd, because everything we've ever theorized or said, everybody just jumped on it and accepted it out of hand, and it became a fact overnight.
Well, that's why I brought it
Poor
up.
guy.
That's the deal, because for 20 years, nobody was listening because it wasn't the right time, it wasn't the right place, based on all we know, or we think we know, end of story.
Gee, conventional wisdom kind of thwarted progress for a while.
So, can you relate to this at all, Dr. Collins?
Yeah, I'm still there. You know, I haven't convinced everybody that el-Hammam is Sodom, or Beit Yeshimot, or any of the other stuff that we've got coming out of el-Hammam. To me, it's obvious as the nose on my face. But hey, other people don't see it that way. But sometimes there's a reason why other people don't see the things that you see. Number one, as you said, they don't do the deep dive into it that you do, and they don't stare at it every day. They kind of have a passing thought about it, but they don't stare at it every day and deal with it like you do every single day for months and years on end. So, conventional wisdom can kind of be set in stone sometimes, at least for a while, till it gets chipped apart.
The two issues for him was wrong date, wrong place.
Gee, I wonder where I've heard that before. So and of course we've spilled a lot of ink and a lot of verbiage talking about that, trying to set the record straight on the location and the proper time frame dating of Sodom from the Bible, and in order to set that historical record straight. But this one is another example of how difficult it is to get people to move off center or move off of another idea in favor of better evidence.
Now, you and I but I'm aware of it, just recently with two wonderful colleagues. One studies one ancient culture, the other studies another ancient culture, and you had communications with both of them on the subject, and in both cases, they just completely missed
a couple of points that they shouldn't have missed.
And
I did point it out.
You did,
and
lovingly.
One of them I haven't heard from yet, back, and the other one said, I'm going to rewrite my article.
That's pretty cool.
So to reflect the data that we supply. And he's been following our work for a long, long time. But because he doesn't think about it that much, he had doing his own thing. He hadn't really incorporated all those thoughts and ideas, and was still kind of playing with the conventional wisdom. And it's easier to pull the conventional wisdom out when you're making a passing statement than it is to go back and double check and make it accurate. So that's all. By the way, that's all we ever ask people to do, right? As scholars, if we say something and we see something, let's run the table. And I don't know. I was never a billiards player. I mean, I have, but I like that idea. If you got all the balls on the table, you got to take them all off. You got to deal with every single one. And a lot of times it's time consuming, and you don't want to make a big deep dive. And but if somebody's going to study it in depth and really come to the truth about it, you got to clear the table. You got to deal with everything.
All right, now since we're doing current events,
so anyway, what do you think about it?
Well, I've looked, and of course I'm no epigrapher and not qualified at all in that area, but it does absolutely look like clearly that's inscribed with something, and if it's not some sort of inscription of writing, there's just no good other ideas, and it isn't cuneiform, it isn't hieroglyphics.
So at least the consensus of most of the scholars at this point is it's not hieroglyphic and it's not cuneiform.
Yeah.
But it's representative symbols of something that looks pretty much like an alphabet.
It looks like at least some of the letters.
But it can't be because it's too early and it's in the wrong place. Okay. Yeah. Let's be
Now-
careful there.
Now, so here we are. This is the end of 2024. ASOR meetings in November.
AD.
AD, yes, thank you. And we're very interested in 2024 BC as
Yeah,
well.
going
That's
both ways.
kind of my deal.
Yep.
But there's something else that's current with all of this, and it happened at the beginning of November or leading up to it, and it's a condition
Oh,
that people
yeah.
have,
Yeah.
and you related to that.
Well, and it wasn't that I co-opted the title of the condition. It's just that the more I thought about it, the more the words were appropriate to what we're dealing with. And so, of course, y'all know, if you've watched the Traveling Down episodes much, we talk about the proper identification of biblical Sodom. And of course, that is the site of Tal el-Hammam, northeast of the Dead Sea in Jordan. And and that all came from the Bible, and the geography of that came from the Bible.
Yeah.
It comes from the proper scientific research and archaeological excavation and all of that. Okay, so the evidence adds up to that fact, but it's been very difficult for people to adopt that. Because the old theory is that Sodom is somehow toward the south end of the Dead Sea, and if it's not in the south end of the Dead Sea, it's not Sodom. And if it's not one of those cities at the south end of the Dead Sea in the Bronze Age, like Babadra or something like that, it can't be Sodom. You put Sodom anywhere else than the south end of the Dead Sea, it can't be Sodom. It's because it's in the wrong place. And Tal el-Hammam can't be Sodom because it's in the 18th century. It's destroyed in the late 18th or early 17th century BC, and that's too late for the time of Abraham. So Abraham has to belong to the 21st century BC. And so we get people with all these assumptions, preconceived ideas, a conventional wisdom in their world, and they can't see the problems that they have. That everything that they say about the location of Sodom and the dating of Sodom and all of that doesn't square with the archaeological record or the historical record or anything like that. But they assume that it does, but they haven't done the deep dive on it that they should, and because it doesn't. Well, what happened is that when we got into this thing 20 some odd years ago, we did do the deep dive, and we've been underwater ever since. We've been deep diving on this thing. And every angle of evidence possible that can be brought to bear on it, we've done it. We continue to do it. Every question that arises, we continue to investigate. And Tal el-Hammam still comes up Sodom every time. Now, why do other people still remain unconvinced? They remain unconvinced because they still haven't quite captured or exercised the ability to take the evidence that they think exists and compare that to the real archaeological facts and see if their viewpoint is viable at all. When they do that, what they discover is it's not even possible. So why do people choose to continue to believe something that is not archaeologically, historically, or textually possible? It shouldn't even be on the table as a discussion, but yet this is the common belief of so many people. And so I was looking for a name for this. Why do people continue to dismiss? And by the way, this kind of geographical controversy doesn't exist over places like Jerusalem or Beersheba, or Ashkelon or Hatzor or maybe Bethsaida.
Maybe.
That one's got a little bit of a shit. But these kind of controversies don't swirl over most biblical sites. But when it comes to Sodom, all kinds of bristles come up with people. All kinds of shields and defensive mechanisms pop up in there. They want to go to fisticuffs over it. I mean, they just all of a sudden they get real defensive about their southern idea of Sodom. And no matter what you say, no matter what evidence you bring up, they can't process the data. And I thought, well, wait a minute. A lot of these are competent scholars, they're good thinkers, they're smart people. Why can't they see their way through it? And so I thought there has to be something else working here. I don't know what it is. Now, in the world of medicine, when you don't know what something is, you use the word syndrome, right? And so, by the way, if you didn't know that, that's what it is. If you hang around medical people, well, why do you use the word syndrome for that? Because we don't know what it is. We just kind of describe it and then slap syndrome on it. Anyway, I've chosen to call this new thing that keeps people from putting logic and reason together and all of that, and coming up with an adequate logical response to the question, where's Sodom? I'm calling it Sodom derangement syndrome.
Sodom derangement syndrome.
And it seems to only happen biblically and archaeologically when the subject of Sodom is brought up. It's just kind of crazy. And so we're going to have some fun with this, I think, and kind of go through the symptoms. What are the symptoms of Sodom derangement syndrome, and how can we cure them, or how can we treat them? And I think we can help some folks move along in their thinking, because I think we need to. I think it matters just simply because facts matter and facts have consequences.
Sodom derangement syndrome. You heard it here first. See you next month. We got more to say.